The world ended in a blinding flash. A white-hot scream of tearing metal and shattering glass that ripped through the thin aluminum shell of our small charter plane. One moment, the pilot's voice crackled a warning about unexpected turbulence. The next, the ground rushed up to meet us, an impossible jagged-maw of snow-covered peaks. Pain exploded in my right leg, a white-hot iron poker jammed into bone, and then darkness. I woke to the biting wind, a cruel, invisible hand slapping my face. My eyelids, heavy with ice, peeled open slowly. The air tasted like frozen needles, sharp and metallic. Around me, the plane lay disemboweled, a grotesque carcass scattered across a pristine white canvas. A silent, frozen graveyard. My breath hitched, a ragged gasp that clawed at my throat. I pushed against the crumpled seatbelt, a dull ache throbbing through my leg, then a sharper, more insistent pang. Panic, cold and swift, snaked through me. I was alone. Then, a movement. A figure, hunched over a piece of wreckage, moved with an unnerving efficiency. Henry. Hank. His name tasted strange, unfamiliar, yet suddenly the most important word in my vocabulary. He moved like a ghost, a silhouette against the stark white, his movements precise, economical. He wasn't looking for survivors, not anymore. He was scavenging. His eyes, when they finally met mine, held a distant, haunted look, like windows into a storm-tossed sea. "You're awake." His voice, a low rumble, seemed to vibrate through the frozen air. Devoid of surprise, devoid of warmth. He didn't ask if I was hurt, didn't offer a hand. He simply observed. My leg. I managed, the words catching, thin and reedy. I tried to shift, a searing agony lancing through me, a choked cry escaping my lips. My vision swam. He dropped a heavy canvas bag beside me, the thud muffled by the snow. His gaze flickered to my leg, then back to my face, a flicker of something unreadable behind his steely eyes. Broken. Compound fracture, looks like. He ripped a strip from a discarded shirt, his fingers deft, not quite gentle, but deliberate. He probed, his touch sending fresh waves of nausea through me. I bit down hard on my lip, tasting blood. "We need to move," he stated, his voice flat, emotionless. He began to fashion a crude splint from a broken seatback, and another strip of fabric. The cold bit into my exposed skin, making my teeth chatter uncontrollably. Move. Where? The question felt foolish, childish. Where could we go? The world stretched out, an endless expanse of white, hostile peaks. He secured the splint, tugging it tight. The pain, though still immense, felt somewhat contained. A duller, more persistent ache. Down. South. There's a river. If we follow it, eventually civilization. He paused, his gaze sweeping the horizon, then settling on me. You can't stay here. You freeze, you die. I freeze. I die. His logic was brutal, unyielding. He hauled me to my feet, my arms slung over his broad shoulder. His body was solid, unyielding, a pillar of strength. The makeshift crutches he'd crafted from the bent pieces of aluminum tube felt clumsy, awkward in my hands. Each step was a fresh explosion of agony, a battle against gravity and the relentless pull of the earth. I stumbled, nearly falling, his grip tightening on my arm, preventing a collapse. Focused, he grunted, his breath pluming in the frigid air. One step, then another. Days blurred into a monotonous cycle of pain, cold, and the relentless crunch of snow beneath our boots. Henry became my lifeline, a silent, unyielding force pushing me forward. He hunted, returning with small, frozen birds or rabbits, which he expertly gutted and roasted over a meager fire. The meat, tough and stringy, was a feast. He built shelters from fallen branches and snow, crude cocoons that offered a fragile respite from the wind's icy embrace. He rarely spoke, his silence a heavy blanket between us, punctuated only by his terse commands. One evening, huddled around a sputtering fire, the wind howling its mournful song, I shivered uncontrollably. Not just from the cold. My father. He used to take my brother hunting. I whispered, the words spilling out, a desperate attempt to fill the vast silence. William. He loved it. They went every year. I clutched the small, worn locket hanging around my neck, its cold metal a familiar comfort. My brother's smiling face, etched into the silver, seemed to mock my current predicament. Henry stirred the embers with a stick, sparks dancing upwards like tiny, desperate stars. He didn't look at me. Your brother? He died, I said. The word a raw wound. Years ago. An accident. My father. He never went hunting again after that. I tried to go with him. This time. To honor William, I guess. But I can't kill anything. I couldn't. He sent me home. A bitter laugh escaped me, a dry, hollow sound. Guess I'm not much of a hunter. He finally looked at me, his gaze intense, piercing. Killing to survive isn't the same as killing for sport. His voice was low, rough, a rasp against the silence. There's no honor in starving. The words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. He didn't offer comfort, didn't offer pity. He offered a stark, brutal truth. And somehow, in that moment, it felt more honest than any platitude. As we descended from the brutal peaks, the landscape slowly transformed. The endless white gave way to patches of dark, skeletal trees, then a dense, ancient evergreen forest. The air, though still cold, held a damp chill, a different kind of bite. I could almost taste the moisture, the scent of pine needles and damp earth replacing the sterile crispness of the high altitudes. The silence here was different too, not the profound, echoing emptiness of the peaks, but a heavy, watchful quiet, punctuated by the rustle of unseen creatures, the drip of melting snow from branches. My leg, though slowly mending, remained a constant, throbbing reminder of our predicament. The pain had settled into a dull roar, a persistent companion. Henry, though still gruff, began to soften imperceptibly. He'd offer me the larger portion of the meager rations, his hand lingering for a fraction of a second when he passed me a steaming cup of melted snow. Small gestures, but in this desolate world, they felt monumental. One afternoon, a sharp crack echoed through the trees. Henry, who had been scouting ahead, froze. His body tensed, every muscle coiled, a predator sensing danger. His eyes, usually distant, sharpened, darting through the undergrowth. "Stay low," he hissed, his voice a barely audible whisper. He pulled a small, wicked-looking knife from his boot, its blade glinting dully. I huddled behind a thick spruce, my heart hammering against my ribs. The air crackled with a palpable tension, a primal fear that resonated deep within me. He moved silently, a shadow among shadows, his senses heightened, his focus absolute. It was terrifying, yet mesmerizing. This was the soldier, the man honed for battle, a stark contrast to the quiet, haunted man who built our fires. He returned an hour later, his face grim, a small deer slung over his shoulder. "Wolves," he said, his voice flat. They were circling. His eyes, though, still held that distant, haunted quality, a residue of the heightened awareness, the combat-honed paranoia that had seized him. He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The knowledge that we were not alone, that other predators roamed this wilderness, was enough. That night, the fear lingered, a cold knot in my stomach. I couldn't sleep. Henry sat by the fire, sharpening his knife, the rhythmic scrape of stone against metal the only sound. "You've been in situations like this before, haven't you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "In the military." He paused, his hands still. He looked at the dancing flames, his face a mask of shadows. "Some," he admitted, his voice a low growl. "Different kind of wilderness." What was it like? The question hung in the air, audacious, perhaps even cruel. But I needed to know. I needed to understand the man who was my only chance at survival. His jaw tightened. He picked up a piece of wood, tossing it into the fire. It hissed, then caught, sending a shower of sparks upwards. "Hot, dusty. People trying to kill you. You trying to kill them." He shrugged, a dismissive gesture that didn't quite hide the tremor in his hands. "Not much to talk about, but it's in your eyes." I pressed, my voice soft, insistent. "That look, like you're always seeing something else." He finally turned to me, his gaze piercing. "You don't want to see what I see, Elijah." His voice was rough, a warning. "Trust me." I shivered, pulling my thin blanket tighter. He was right. I didn't. But I also saw past the soldier, past the gruff exterior, to something vulnerable. Something deeply wounded. A man aching for connection, perhaps, even if he didn't know it. Weeks bled into each other, marked only by the shifting light, the changing temperatures, and the slow, agonizing progress of my leg. The jungle-like expanse, as I had come to think of it, was a tangle of moss-draped trees, gnarled roots, and a perpetual dampness that seeped into everything. We found shelter in hidden caves, their damp, earthy smell a strange comfort. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, my leg throbbing relentlessly, I collapsed onto the cave floor. A groan escaped me, unbidden. Henry knelt beside me, his hand resting lightly on my forehead. His touch, though fleeting, sent a jolt through me. "Fever," he murmured, his brow furrowed. He rummaged through his pack, producing a small, tarnished flask. "Drink this." The liquid burned, a fiery trail down my throat, but it brought a strange warmth, a dulling of the pain. I lay back, exhausted, watching him through half-closed eyes. He sat by the fire, his back to me, but I felt his presence, a steady, comforting weight. "Thank you, Henry," I whispered, the words slurring slightly from the potent liquid. He didn't reply, but I saw his shoulders relax, almost imperceptibly. As my leg slowly, agonizingly, began to mend, our interactions shifted. The necessity of physical dependence had forged a bond, a silent understanding now. With the immediate threat of my immobility lessening, a different kind of intimacy began to bloom. We talked more by the firelight, sharing whispered stories that were fragments of our past lives, hesitant offerings in the vast wilderness. I told him about my family, my father's quiet strength, my mother's gentle humor, William's boisterous laughter. He listened, his gaze fixed on the flames, but I felt his attention, a deep, unspoken connection. He in turn spoke of his childhood, a barren landscape of neglect and harsh realities. He spoke of joining the military, not with pride, but with a weary resignation. A path chosen out of necessity, not ambition. He never spoke of combat directly, but the unspoken stories, the shadows in his eyes, spoke volumes. One night, a fierce blizzard descended, trapping us in a small, cramped cave. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the very stones around us. The cold seeped through our thin blankets, a pervasive chill that gnawed at our bones. I shivered uncontrollably, my teeth chattering. Henry, without a word, moved closer, wrapping his arm around me. His body was warm, solid, a bulwark against the invading cold. I leaned into him, burying my face in his shoulder, inhaling the scent of wood smoke, pine, and something uniquely him, a clean, masculine scent that was both comforting and intoxicating. His hand, rough and calloused, stroked my hair, a tentative, almost hesitant gesture. Cold, I mumbled, my voice muffled against his jacket. I know, he whispered back, his breath warm against my ear. Just try to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. The blizzard raged outside, a furious symphony of wind and snow. Inside, a different kind of storm brewed, a quiet, insistent warmth spreading through me, chasing away the chill. His touch, his closeness, ignited something deep within, a spark of longing I hadn't realized I possessed. I felt the steady thrum of his heartbeat against my back, a comforting rhythm in the chaotic night. My hand, almost without conscious thought, found its way to his chest, resting over his heart. I felt the strong, steady beat beneath my palm. He didn't pull away. Instead, his arm tightened around me, pulling me closer still, until there was no space left between us. My leg, usually a source of pain, felt numb, forgotten in the surge of other sensations. I turned in his embrace, my face mere inches from his. In the flickering firelight, his eyes, usually so guarded, held a new depth, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. His gaze lingered on my lips, then my eyes, then back to my lips. My breath hitched. Henry, I whispered, the name a soft caress. He leaned in, slowly, his breath ghosting over my lips. His scent, close now, filled my senses, a heady mix of earth and man. His lips, chapped and rough from the cold, met mine. It was a tentative kiss, a question more than a demand. My own lips parted, a silent invitation. He deepened the kiss, slowly, exploring, his tongue tracing the seam of my mouth. I gasped, a small sound lost in the howl of the wind. His tongue slipped inside, a warm, soft invasion. I met him, my own tongue dancing with his, a slow, sensual exploration. His arm tightened around my waist, pulling me even closer, pressing our bodies together until I could feel the hard planes of his chest against mine, the warmth of his skin seeping through our layers of clothing. My fingers, still on his chest, curled into his jacket, clutching the fabric as if to anchor myself to this moment, to him. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, more desperate. My head swam, a delicious intoxication. All the fear, the cold, the pain receded, replaced by this overwhelming sensation of him, of us. His hand moved from my waist, sliding upwards, tracing the curve of my spine, his thumb brushing against the sensitive skin of my neck. A shiver, not of cold, but of pure sensation, ran through me. He broke the kiss, pulling back just enough for his forehead to rest against mine. Our breaths mingling in the frigid air. His eyes, dark and intense, searched mine. Elijah, he breathed, his voice raw, husky. The way he said my name, it wasn't just a sound. It was a confession, a plea, a promise. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat. I reached up, my fingers tracing the rough stubble on his jaw, feeling the warmth of his skin. Stay, I whispered, the word barely audible, a desperate plea. He kissed me again, this time with a fierce intensity, a hunger that mirrored my own. His lips devoured mine, his tongue plundering, seeking, claiming. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer still, wanting to melt into him, to become one. The world outside, the raging blizzard, the unforgiving wilderness, faded into insignificance. There was only us, in this small, cramped cave, surrounded by the warmth of our bodies, the fire of our burgeoning desire. His hand moved from my neck, sliding down my back, then lower, cupping my ass, pressing me firmly against his erection, hard and insistent through our clothes. A gasp escaped my lips, a mix of shock and pure pleasure. He groaned, a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through my body. God, Elijah, he murmured against my lips, his voice thick with desire. My own body responded, a liquid heat spreading through my groin. My hips instinctively arched into his, seeking more, needing more. The friction, even through our clothes, was electrifying. He pulled back slightly, his eyes still locked with mine, a silent question in their depths. I nodded, a desperate, eager movement. He broke away, pulling off his jacket, then mine, the rough fabric rustling against our skin. His shirt followed, revealing a broad, Muscular chest, scarred and weathered, but beautiful. I reached out, my fingers tracing the line of his collarbone, the hard planes of his pectorals. He shivered at my touch, a small, involuntary tremor. "You're beautiful," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. He said nothing, simply leaned in, kissing me again, his lips trailing down my jaw to my neck, his stubble a delicious rasp against my skin. He found the sensitive hollow of my throat, suckling gently, sending shivers through my entire body. I arched my neck, giving him full access, my hands tangling in his dark hair. He pulled back, his eyes dark with desire, and began to unbutton my shirt, his fingers fumbling slightly in his eagerness. My own hands went to his belt buckle, fumbling with the unfamiliar mechanism. A small, embarrassed laugh escaped me. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound, and took over, swiftly unzipping my pants, then his own. The cold air, a stark contrast to the heat building between us, bit at my exposed skin as our clothes came off. Piece by piece, we shivered, but not from cold. My leg, still bandaged, felt strangely detached, a minor inconvenience in the face of this overwhelming need. He gently pushed me onto my back, his body hovering over mine. His eyes, dark and intense, devoured me, a silent hunger in their depths. I felt vulnerable, exposed, yet utterly safe. He leaned down, kissing my chest, then lower, his lips tracing a path over my abdomen, sending goosebumps erupting on my skin. He paused at my navel, his tongue swirling, a small, exquisite torture. My breath hitched, my hips lifting involuntarily. He moved lower still, his rough, callous hand cupping my cock through my boxers. A jolt, pure and electric, shot through me. I groaned, my eyes fluttering shut. "Elijah," he whispered, his voice a low growl. He pulled down my boxers, freeing my dick, already hard and pulsing. His fingers wrapped around it, a firm, possessive grip. He stroked me, slowly at first, then with increasing speed, his thumb circling the sensitive head. My hips bucked, a desperate need clawing at me. He leaned down, his mouth closing around the tip of my cock, his tongue swirling, teasing. A gasp tore from my throat. His suckling was deep, insistent, his lips hot and wet. I arched into him, my back bowing, my fingers clutching at his hair, pulling him closer, deeper. The sensation was overwhelming, exquisite, a torrent of pure pleasure. He pulled back, his mouth slick and glistening, his eyes dark with a triumphant glint. He looked at my throbbing cock, then back at my face, a possessive smirk playing on his lips. "You like that, huh?" he murmured, his voice husky. I could only nod, breathless, my body trembling with desire. He moved between my legs, his knees pressing against my thighs. I felt the heat of his cock, hard and thick against my inner thigh. He pushed gently, his head pressing against my entrance. I gasped, a thrill shooting through me. He was big. "Relax," he whispered, his voice soft, reassuring. He kissed me again, a deep, lingering kiss, distracting me from the unfamiliar sensation. As our lips moved, his hips gave a gentle thrust. A sharp pain, then a stretch, a fullness I'd never known. I cried out, a small, choke sound. He froze, his body tensing. "Too much," he breathed, his voice laced with concern. "No," I gasped, "just wait." I pushed into him, wanting to feel him deeper, wanting to overcome the initial discomfort. He eased forward, slowly, inch by agonizing inch, until the head was fully past. I felt a tearing sensation, a sting, then a dull ache, quickly overshadowed by a growing sense of fullness, of being stretched, filled by him. I wrapped my legs around his waist, pulling him deeper. He groaned, a sound of pure satisfaction, and began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing rhythm. His cock slid in and out, a slick, wet sound echoing in the small cave. Each thrust was deep, filling me completely, stretching me in ways I hadn't imagined possible. My body, once rigid with apprehension, now moved in sync with his, a primal dance of desire. His balls slapped against my ass with each thrust, a rhythmic thud that added to the intoxicating symphony of our bodies. I felt his cock, thick and hot, rubbing against something deep inside me, a pressure that built with every stroke. My own cock, still hard, pulsed with a desperate need, rubbing against his abdomen, slick with sweat. "God, Henry," I whimpered, my voice raw with pleasure. I clenched around him, taking him deeper, wanting to consume him. He groaned, his thrusts becoming more forceful, more urgent. He buried his face in my neck, his breath hot against my skin. "Elijah," he gasped, his voice strained. "You feel so good." The rhythm built, faster and faster, a frantic, desperate pace. My body vibrated with the intensity of it, on the verge of shattering. I felt the pressure building inside me, a sweet, agonizing climax threatening to explode. His thrusts were relentless, pounding into me, pushing me closer and closer to the edge. A final, powerful thrust, and I cried out, my back arching, my body convulsing around him as I came. A wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure washing over me. My cock pulsed, releasing its hot, sticky load onto his abdomen. He groaned a deep, guttural sound, and then, with a final, shuddering thrust, he spilled his seed deep inside me, a warm, thick gush that filled me completely. He collapsed onto me, his body heavy and spent, his breath ragged against my ear. We lay there, tangled together, our bodies slick with sweat, the scent of sex thick in the cold air. The blizzard still raged outside, but inside, a profound stillness had settled, a quiet, intimate peace. He shifted, propping himself up on his elbows, his eyes, dark and heavy-lidded, met mine. A soft smile, a genuine, unburdened smile, touched his lips. "That was something," he murmured, his voice still husky. I smiled back, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the fire. "Yeah," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "It was." I reached up, my fingers tracing the lines of his face, the faint scars, the rough stubble. This was Henry, my survival, my anchor. And now, something more. Something profound and utterly unexpected. The wilderness, for all its brutality, had given us this. A fragile new world, built for just the two of us. But would it be enough? Could this love, forged in desperation, survive the harsh realities of our struggle? Or would it, like so many other things, be swallowed by the cold, unforgiving wild? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as we clung to each other, to souls lost and found in the heart of the storm. The morning after was a quiet affair, the blizzard having blown itself out, leaving behind a world hushed and pristine under a fresh blanket of snow. Sunlight, sharp and brilliant, filtered through the cave entrance, painting the icy walls with shifting patterns of light. I woke in Henry's arms, his body a warm, comforting weight against mine. The memory of the night before, vivid and intoxicating, brought a blush to my cheeks. My body ached, a sweet, satisfying soreness, a testament to the raw, unbridled passion we had shared. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open. A soft smile, a rare sight, touched his lips as he met my gaze. "Morning, Elijah." His voice, still husky with sleep, sent a shiver down my spine. "Morning, Henry." I snuggled closer, inhaling his scent, a mix of wood smoke, pine, and something undeniably him. The world outside, for a brief, precious moment, ceased to exist. There was only us, wrapped in the warmth of our shared intimacy. He kissed the top of my head, a tender, possessive gesture. "We should get moving soon," he murmured, his voice tinged with a familiar pragmatism. "Sun's up, good travel day." The practicalities of survival, though momentarily forgotten, still loomed large, but now, they felt different. Not a burden, but a shared purpose. We broke camp, a comfortable silence settling between us. The lingering intimacy of the night before hummed beneath the surface, a new current in the river of our shared existence. He moved with his usual efficiency, but now his eyes met mine more often, a soft warmth replacing the distant haunted look. He helped me with my pack, his hands lingering on my shoulders, a silent promise in his touch. My leg, though still a hindrance, felt stronger, the pain a dull throb rather than a searing agony. The makeshift crutches, once a symbol of my helplessness, now felt like an extension of myself. We continued our descent, the evergreen forest growing denser, the air heavier with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The landscape, once a stark white, now burst with muted greens and browns, a subtle symphony of life emerging from winter's grip. As the days turned into weeks, our routine settled into a comfortable rhythm. We walked, we hunted, we built fires, and we talked. The whispered stories by the firelight grew longer, deeper, revealing more of ourselves, stripping away the layers of protection we had both built around our hearts. I told him about my dreams of becoming a writer, of the stories I wanted to tell, of the worlds I wanted to create. He listened intently, his gaze fixed on my face, a genuine interest in his eyes. "You should write them down," he said one evening, his voice soft. "Don't let them die inside you." "I don't know if I'll ever get the chance," I confessed, a wave of despair washing over me. The thought of rescue, once a burning beacon, now felt like a distant, flickering candle. He reached across the small fire, taking my hand in his. His touch was firm, reassuring. "We'll get out of this, Elijah," he stated, his voice devoid of doubt. "And when we do, you'll write your stories. I'll make sure of it." His conviction was a balm to my weary soul. His own stories, when he shared them, were fragments, glimpses into a life far removed from my own. He spoke of the camaraderie, the fierce loyalty forged in the crucible of combat, but also of the crushing weight of loss, the indelible scars left by war. He never romanticized it, never glorified it. He spoke with a quiet resignation, a man who had seen too much, felt too deeply. "There are things," he said one night, his voice barely a whisper, "things you do, things you see. They don't ever leave you. They become a part of you, like ghosts." His gaze drifted to the shadows dancing on the cave wall, as if seeing them there, lurking in the periphery. I squeezed his hand, a silent offering of comfort. "I understand," I said, though I knew I couldn't truly. Not fully, but I could listen. I could be there. He turned to me, his eyes softening. You don't have to understand, Elijah. Just be here. And I was. I was there for him. Just as he was there for me. Our love, forged in the crucible of desperation, grew stronger with each passing day, a vibrant, tenacious bloom in the heart of the wilderness. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about building a future together. One afternoon, as we traversed a particularly treacherous ravine, Henry suddenly froze. His body tensed, his eyes scanning the dense undergrowth, his hand instinctively going to the knife at his hip. Hear that? He whispered, his voice low, urgent. I strained my ears, but heard nothing but the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of a bird. What is it? Something big, he murmured, his gaze fixed on a cluster of thick bushes. And close. A low growl, deep and resonant, rumbled through the air, sending a chill down my spine. My heart leaped into my throat. Bear, Henry breathed, his eyes narrowed, his stance shifting, ready for a fight. Panic, cold and swift, seized me. My leg, usually a source of dull pain, now throbbed with a terrifying intensity. I felt utterly helpless. Stay behind me, he commanded, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. He slowly, deliberately, drew his knife, its blade glinting ominously in the dappled sunlight. The bushes rustled violently, and then a massive grizzly bear, its fur matted and shaggy, lumbered into view. It was enormous, a formidable beast, its eyes fixed on us, a primal hunger in their depths. A guttural roar erupted from its throat, echoing through the ravine. My breath caught in my throat. My body froze, every instinct screaming at me to run, but my legs, still weak, refused to obey. Henry, however, remained calm, his gaze unwavering. He stood his ground, a defiant figure against the imposing beast. Hey? He shouted, his voice ringing with authority, surprisingly loud in the vast wilderness. He took a step forward, raising his knife, a desperate bluff. The bear hesitated, its massive head cocked, assessing. It let out another roar, a warning, then took a tentative step towards us. Henry didn't flinch. He let out a roar of his own, a primal, guttural sound that seemed to shake the very ground. He charged, not at the bear, but past it, towards a fallen log, picking up a heavy branch, thick and gnarled, and brandishing it like a club. The bear, startled by his unexpected aggression, paused, its predatory instincts momentarily confused. This was not the typical prey that fled in terror. Run, Elijah, Henry yelled, his voice strained, his eyes fixed on the bear. Now, my legs, spurred by a fresh surge of adrenaline, finally obeyed. I stumbled, half running, half hobbling, my crutches clattering against the rocks. I didn't look back, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I heard the sounds of a struggle behind me, the roar of the bear, Henry's grunts of effort, the splintering of wood. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs screamed in protest, until I could run no more. I collapsed behind a thick cluster of trees, gasping for breath, my body trembling uncontrollably. Fear, cold and absolute, enveloped me. Had he made it? Minutes stretched into an eternity. The sounds of struggle had ceased. A terrifying silence descended, broken only by my ragged breathing. Then, a rustle in the bushes. My heart leaped, expecting the bear. But it was Henry. He emerged from the trees, his face streaked with dirt and blood, his clothes torn. The branch he'd wielded was splintered, useless. But he was alive. He was alive. I scrambled to my feet, throwing myself into his arms, burying my face in his chest. Henry, you're alive. Tears, hot and stinging, streamed down my face. He held me tight, his arms wrapped around me, his body trembling slightly. Barely, he gasped. His voice hoarse. Stupid bear, got a good swipe in. He pulled back, revealing a long, deep gash on his arm, blood oozing freely. Oh my God, I whispered, my voice choked with horror. We need to clean that, now. We found a small, clear stream, its icy water a shock against his wound. I carefully cleaned the gash, my hands trembling. He winced, but didn't complain. The sight of his blood, so red and vibrant against his pale skin, filled me with a fresh wave of fear. What if it got infected? What if we couldn't get help? It's deep, I murmured, my voice thick with worry. I've had worse, he said, his voice trying for nonchalance, but I saw the pain etched in his eyes. I ripped a strip from my shirt, fashioning a makeshift bandage, tying it as tightly as I dared. You were so brave, I whispered, looking up at him, my eyes brimming with admiration. You saved me. He shrugged, a dismissive gesture. Just instinct. Wouldn't let anything happen to you, Elijah. His gaze, warm and intense, held mine. In that moment, surrounded by the raw, untamed wilderness, his words were the most precious gift he could have given me. The bear encounter, though terrifying, solidified something between us. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting each other, a fierce, unspoken promise. Henry's wound, though painful, slowly began to heal, a testament to his resilience and our shared determination. As we continued our journey, the landscape shifted once more. The dense evergreen forest began to thin, replaced by a more open terrain, dotted with rocky outcrops and sparse, vine-stunted trees. The air grew colder again, hinting at higher elevations, a return to the brutal peaks we had thought we'd left behind. A sense of foreboding settled over me. "Are we going back up?" I asked, my voice tinged with dread. Henry consulted his crude compass, a battered, old military issue he'd salvaged from the plane wreckage. His brow furrowed. "Looks like it," he admitted, his voice grim. "River bends. We have to cross this ridge to get back to it." The news was a heavy blow. The thought of climbing back into the desolate, frozen heights filled me with a profound weariness. My leg, though stronger, was still not fully healed, and the thought of navigating treacherous, icy slopes filled me with dread. The climb was brutal, each step an agonizing struggle against gravity and the relentless cold. The wind, a cruel, invisible hand, clawed at our clothes, stealing our breath. The air grew thin, sharp, burning my lungs with every gasp. Henry, though strong, also struggled, his labored breathing a stark reminder of the toll this unforgiving landscape was taking on us both. One afternoon, a sudden, blinding whiteout descended. A furious blizzard that swallowed the world in a maelstrom of swirling snow. The wind howled, a deafening roar that drowned out all other sounds. Visibility dropped to mere feet. "We were lost, Henry," I shouted, my voice snatched away by the wind. I reached out, my hand grasping blindly, desperately for him. He was there, his hand finding mine, his grip firm, reassuring. "Hold on," he yelled, his voice barely audible above the storm. "Stay close." We huddled together, back to back, seeking what little shelter we could find against a jagged rock face. The cold seeped into our bones, a relentless, insidious enemy. I shivered uncontrollably, my teeth chattering so hard I thought they would shatter. My fingers and toes grew numb, a terrifying precursor to frostbite. "I can't feel my fingers," I cried, my voice thin, reedy with fear. He pulled off his gloves, chafing my hands between his, trying to restore circulation. His own hands were rough, calloused, but surprisingly warm. "Rub them," he commanded, his voice urgent. "Keep moving them." Hours passed, an eternity of biting cold and swirling snow. We talked, shouted, anything to keep ourselves awake, to fight off the seductive lure of hypothermia. We recited our names, our birth dates, fragments of our past, anything to anchor ourselves to reality, to each other. "My favorite color is blue," I shouted, my voice raw. "Mine's green," he yelled back, his voice hoarse. "I love coffee. Tea for me." We laughed, hollow, desperate sound swallowed by the storm, but it was laughter nonetheless, a defiant act against the overwhelming bleakness. As the storm raged, Henry's psychological demons, long dormant, began to stir. His eyes, usually so clear, grew distant, haunted. He muttered to himself, fragments of military jargon, names I didn't recognize. He flinched at sudden gust of wind, his body tensing, as if expecting an attack. "Henry?" I whispered, reaching out, touching his arm. He recoiled, his eyes wide, unfocused. "They're coming," he mumbled, his voice thick with paranoia. "They're always coming." My heart ached for him. This was the dark side of his strength, the invisible wounds that never truly healed. "No one's coming, Henry," I said, my voice soft, soothing. "It's just the wind. It's just the storm." He shivered, pulling me closer, his grip tight, almost painful. "Don't leave me, Elijah," he whispered, his voice raw, childlike. "Don't let them take me." "I won't," I promised, holding him tight, my own fear momentarily forgotten in the face of his vulnerability. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." I kissed his forehead, then his lips, a tender, desperate kiss, pouring all my love, all my reassurance, into it. Slowly, imperceptibly, the storm began to abate. The wind's howl softened to a mournful sigh. The swirling snow lessened, revealing glimpses of a bruised, leaden sky. When the sun finally broke through, painting the snow-covered peaks in hues of gold and rose, it felt like a miracle. Henry, exhausted, had fallen into a deep, dreamless sleep, his head resting on my shoulder. I watched him, his face peaceful in repose, the lines of worry smooth away. I stroked his hair, a silent promise to protect him, to fight for him, just as he had fought for me. We continued our journey, the landscape now a treacherous maze of snowdrifts and icy patches. The sun, though present, offered little warmth, and the days were short, the nights long and bitterly cold. Our rations dwindled, our bodies grew weaker, but our resolve, fueled by our burgeoning love, remained unbroken. One afternoon, as we traversed a particularly steep incline, my crutches slipped on a patch of ice. I cried out, my body pitching forward, tumbling down the slope, my injured leg screaming in protest. I heard Henry's shout, his desperate cry, as I slid, helpless, towards the edge of a precipice. I braced myself for the impact, for the fall, for the end. But then a strong hand grabbed my arm, yanking me back, pulling me upwards with a desperate strength. Henry. He dragged me back to solid ground, his face pale, his breath ragged. He held me close, his body trembling. Elijah, he gasped, his voice choked with emotion. God, Elijah, I thought I lost you. I clung to him, my body shaking, tears streaming down my face. I thought it was over. He held me tighter, burying his face in my hair. Never, he whispered, his voice fierce. Not as long as I'm here. Never. In that moment, battered and bruised, clinging to each other on the edge of a frozen cliff, our love felt like the only thing keeping us alive, the only thing that mattered. It was our anchor, our shield against the indifferent cruelty of the wilderness. Days blurred into a monotonous rhythm of hunger, cold, and the relentless struggle against the elements. My leg, though slowly healing, was still a source of constant pain, and Henry's arm, though mending, ached with the effort of our arduous journey. We were both gaunt, our faces hollowed by hunger, our clothes tattered and worn. Hope, once a flickering flame, now felt like a dying ember. One evening, huddled around a meager fire, the silence between us was heavy, laden with unspoken fears. I looked at Henry, his face etched with weariness, his eyes distant once more. The ghosts were returning. Henry, I whispered, reaching out, taking his hand. We're going to make it. We have to. He squeezed my hand, his gaze fixed on the flames. I don't know, Elijah, he admitted, his voice raw, devoid of its usual conviction. I don't know how much more I have left. My heart clenched. This was the first time I had heard such despair from him. The first time his formidable strength seemed to waver. Don't say that, I pleaded, my voice breaking. We've come so far. We can't give up now. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a profound sadness. What if there's nothing out there, Elijah? What if we just keep walking, and there's nothing? His words, echoing my own unspoken fears, sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the cold. There has to be, I insisted, my voice trembling. There has to be something. A town, a road. Anything. He said nothing, simply pulled me closer, resting his head on my shoulder. We sat in silence, the weight of our despair a tangible presence in the small, flickering circle of firelight. The next morning, we woke to a strange sound, a faint, rhythmic thrumming in the distance. We looked at each other, our eyes wide with a mixture of hope and disbelief. What is that? I whispered, my heart pounding. Henry sprang to his feet, his weariness momentarily forgotten. He strained his ears, his gaze sweeping the horizon. Helicopter, he breathed, his voice filled with an incredulous wonder. It's a goddamn helicopter. A surge of adrenaline, pure and exhilarating, shot through me. Hope, a blazing wildfire, erupted in my chest. They found us, I cried, tears springing to my eyes. He grabbed my hand, pulling me to my feet. We have to signal them, he yelled, his voice cracking with emotion. He began waving his arms wildly, shouting, his voice hoarse. I joined him, my own voice raw, screaming into the vastness of the sky. The thrumming grew louder, closer, and then a dark speck appeared on the horizon, growing steadily larger. It was real. It was actually happening. We stood there, clinging to each other, tears streaming down our faces, watching as the helicopter descended, a beacon of salvation in the endless white. The rescue was a blur of flashing lights, frantic voices, and the dizzying sensation of being lifted into the sky. I remember the warmth of a blanket, the sweet taste of hot tea, the kind faces of the paramedics, and then Henry's hand, finding mine, squeezing it tight. A silent promise, a confirmation that we had made it. We had truly made it. The hospital was a jarring contrast to the wilderness, a sterile, brightly lit world of beeping machines and hushed voices. My leg, though still painful, was being tended to by skilled hands, and Henry's wounds were cleaned and stitched. We were safe. As I lay in my hospital bed, the locket, my brother's smiling face, felt different now. Not a reminder of loss, but a testament to resilience, to the enduring power of love and memory. Henry, discharged a few days before me, was a constant presence by my bedside. He brought me books, talked to me for hours, his voice a soothing balm. His eyes, though still holding traces of the haunted past, now shone with a newfound warmth, a quiet peace. The ghost, though still present, seemed to recede into the background, overshadowed by the vibrant reality of our shared future. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the hospital window, painting the room in soft, golden hues, I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not just the soldier, not just the survivor, but the man, my man, who had walked through hell with me and emerged, not unscathed, but whole. Henry, I began, my voice soft. What happens now? The question, though unspoken, hung heavy in the air. We had survived the wilderness, but could our love survive the complexities of the real world? He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. His gaze, warm and steady, met mine. Whatever you want, Elijah, he said, his voice firm, resolute. Whatever we want. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached my eyes. I want to write my stories, I confessed. The dream, once a distant whisper, now a clear, resonant call. And you will, he promised, his eyes shining. And I'll be there, to read every single one. He paused, a small smile playing on his lips. Maybe I'll even learn to like tea. I laughed, a joyous, unrestrained sound. Maybe, I said, a playful glint in my eyes. But first, I want to take you home. My home. And then, I want to make love to you, Henry, properly, without the fear of freezing to death. A slow smile spread across his face, a warmth radiating from him that chased away the lingering chill of the wilderness. Sounds like a plan, Elijah, he murmured, his voice thick with desire. A damn good plan. He leaned in, his lips brushing against mine, a soft, tender kiss that promised a future. A future built on shared dreams, on unwavering love, on the hard-won knowledge that even in the face of absolute despair, hope, and love, could always find a way to bloom. The wilderness had tested us, stripped us bare, but it had also given us the most precious gift of all, each other. And as I looked at Henry, my hand intertwined with his, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my soul, that our journey, far from over, had only just begun. We had walked through the wild and found our way home, not just to civilization, but to each other. Our love a beacon, shining brightly against the fading echoes of the evergreen.